Hey everyone, welcome to Posy 2 Mind. What if I told you that you might be the one sabotaging your relationships without even realizing it? That's right, it's not always the other person's fault. The uncomfortable truth is that some of the things we do every day, things we don't even think about, could be quietly destroying our closest connections. In fact, most of us are guilty of these behaviors. They're so common that they often go unnoticed, but the damage they cause is real. And here's the part that might surprise you. Fixing these habits isn't just about improving your relationships. It's about changing your entire mindset. You might not agree with everything I say today, but sometimes the truth hurts, and that's exactly what you need to hear. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see relationships in a whole new light. Let's dive in. 1. Fake humility. One of the most insidious habits that can destroy relationships is fake humility. We all know that humility is a good thing. It's endearing, it's respectful, and it shows that you're not overly focused on yourself. But there's a fine line between being genuinely humble and using humility as a manipulative tool to fish for compliments. You've probably encountered this before. Someone says something like, "Oh, I'm terrible at this," but they're actually quite skilled. What they're doing is seeking validation, hoping you'll disagree and shower them with praise. The issue with fake humility is that over time it becomes exhausting for others. People can sense that it's not sincere, and it starts to feel like a manipulation tactic rather than true modesty. I once had a friend who constantly downplayed her achievements. At first, I thought she was just being modest, but after a while, it became clear that she was fishing for compliments. Every time she said, "I didn't do that well," or "I'm not that talented," it was followed by a long list of people reassuring her that she was, in fact, amazing. What I learned from this experience is that true humility doesn't seek validation. Real humility comes from being confident enough in your abilities that you don't need others to constantly reaffirm them. Over time, this habit can push people away because it feels like emotional labor to constantly reassure someone. It creates an imbalance where one person is constantly giving and the other is constantly taking. Healthy relationships need to be built on mutual respect and sincerity, not hidden requests for validation. 2. Being too agreeable. People often mistake being agreeable for being easygoing or likable. But there's a big difference between being cooperative and being a people pleaser. Agreeableness becomes destructive when you're constantly putting others' needs and opinions above your own, even at the cost of your well-being. Why is this a problem? Because over time, people will start to see you as someone who has no backbone, someone who can't stand up for themselves. You might think that agreeing with everyone will make people like you, but it actually does the opposite. People lose respect for you because you come across as inauthentic. And when you don't stand up for your own values or boundaries, resentment builds, both within yourself and from others who notice your lack of conviction. In my early 20s, I was the ultimate people pleaser. I said yes to every request, agreed with every opinion, and went along with plans even when I didn't enjoy them. I thought that being agreeable would make people like me more, but what I found was that it actually made me invisible. People didn't respect me because I didn't stand up for myself. I was just there, blending into the background. The truth is, people respect those who respect themselves enough to say no when necessary. The lesson here? Don't sacrifice your own identity to please others. A healthy relationship is one where both parties can express their true selves without fear of rejection. If you're constantly agreeing just to avoid conflict, you're doing a disservice to yourself and the relationship. 3. The social chameleon. We've all been in situations where we feel the need to adapt to fit in. Whether it's adjusting your behavior, changing your interests, or even adopting different opinions just to be accepted, this habit is known as the social chameleon effect. While adaptability is a valuable trait, losing your true self in the process is detrimental to your relationships. When you constantly change who you are to fit in, people may like you initially, but they won't respect you. Over time, it becomes obvious that you're not being authentic, and this can lead to shallow or superficial relationships. Worse, you'll feel disconnected from yourself as you begin to lose sight of your own values and interests. I once joined a group of friends who were into things that I didn't care much about. Certain music genres, hobbies, even lifestyle choices. To fit in, I started pretending to like those things, even though they didn't resonate with me. For a while, I felt accepted, but deep down, I wasn't being true to myself. Eventually, I felt exhausted from pretending, and those friendships faded because they were built on a false version of me. What I learned is that true relationships are built on authenticity. If you're constantly pretending to be someone you're not, you're depriving yourself and others of genuine connection. People are drawn to those who are unapologetically themselves, not those who mold themselves to fit in. 4. Perfectionism. Perfectionism is often seen as a positive trait. Who doesn't want to be perfect, right? But in reality, perfectionism can be one of the most destructive forces in relationships. When you set impossibly high standards for yourself and others, it creates an environment where mistakes aren't tolerated and growth is stifled. The truth is, no one is perfect. Trying to be perfect all the time or expecting others to meet your standards of perfection is not only exhausting but also isolating. People will start to feel like they can't be themselves around you because they fear judgment or criticism. And you, in turn, will feel frustrated and disappointed because no one, including yourself, can live up to these unrealistic expectations. I used to be obsessed with the idea of being the perfect partner, friend, and employee. I thought that if I could do everything perfectly, people would love me more. But what ended up happening was the opposite. My relationship suffered because people felt they couldn't be their authentic selves around me. I was so focused on being flawless that I didn't allow room for mistakes or growth, and that created an unhealthy dynamic. The lesson here is to embrace imperfection. No one is perfect, and that's what makes us human. Relationships thrive when people feel free to be themselves, flaws and all. Instead of striving for perfection, aim for authenticity and growth. 5. Pick-me mentality. The pick-me mentality is all about seeking validation in the wrong ways. People with this mindset often go out of their way to be noticed, whether it's by constantly comparing themselves to others or showcasing their uniqueness in a way that feels forced. The problem with this mentality is that it's rooted in insecurity, and over time, it pushes people away rather than drawing them in. When you're desperate for validation, it shows. You might think you're making yourself more likable by highlighting how different or special you are. But in reality, people sense the desperation behind it. Instead of being drawn to you, they're repelled by the neediness and insecurity that come with the pick-me mindset. I once knew someone who was constantly trying to prove they were better than everyone else. Whether it was through their hobbies, interests, or even the way they dressed, everything was about being different. At first, it was intriguing, but after a while, it became exhausting. It felt like they were constantly seeking approval, and it made our friendship feel one-sided. The lesson? You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. True confidence comes from within, not from seeking external validation. When you stop trying to prove how unique or special you are, people will naturally be drawn to your authenticity. 6. Zero-sum thinking. Turning life into a competition. The zero-sum mindset is one of the most destructive habits when it comes to relationships. This mentality views life as a competition, where someone else's success means your failure. People with this mindset are constantly comparing themselves to others, and as a result, they feel jealous or resentful when others achieve something they haven't. This mindset creates a toxic environment where relationships become transactional. Instead of celebrating each other's successes, you start to view your friends or partners as competitors. And when that happens, it's nearly impossible to build genuine supportive connections. I used to fall into this trap myself. Whenever a friend achieved something I hadn't, I would feel envious instead of happy for them. It wasn't until I realized that life isn't a competition that I began to change my mindset. When I started celebrating others' successes, I found that my relationships became much stronger and more fulfilling. Now that we've uncovered these 6 common habits, what are you going to do about it? Awareness is the first step, but it's not enough. If you want to truly improve your relationships, you need to start making changes today. Think about which of these habits you might be guilty of. Are you fishing for compliments? Are you constantly agreeing to things just to avoid conflict? Or maybe you're stuck in a mindset that sees life as a competition. Here's the challenge. Pick just one of these habits to focus on this week. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but that discomfort is where growth happens. As you begin to shift your mindset and change these behaviors, you'll notice a profound difference in how people respond to you. Your relationships will become more meaningful, more authentic, and more fulfilling. Remember, real connection comes from vulnerability, honesty, and self-awareness. If you found this video helpful, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to Posy 2 Mind. And in the comments, let me know. Which of these habits are you going to work on first? Let's keep the conversation going and grow together.